This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: preparing for Typhoon Saola, flights cancelled and financial markets closed as the storm bears down on southern China. Our other headlines: people in Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine cast their votes in regional elections, which officials in Kyiv describe as illegal. One of the leaders of US far-right group the Proud Boys gets a 17-year jail sentence for the storming of Capitol Hill. And our murder mystery games are helping Chengdu residents discover hidden secrets in their city. Most of Hong Kong and other parts of southern China have ground to a standstill as Typhoon Saola approaches. Businesses, schools and financial markets are closed and hundreds of flights cancelled. The weather forecasters say this could be one of the strongest typhoons to hit the Chinese province of Guangdong since the year 1949, with Hong Kong and Macau expected to feel the full force. Well, our correspondent Omar Khan is in Guangzhou in Guangdong province. Omar, what's the story where you are?
Well, Jamie, this isn't usually how I'd like to spend my Friday night, standing outside in these incredibly strong winds and these downpours. But this is the work for us here. We are following this typhoon, this super typhoon Saola that is hitting southern parts of China, primarily Guangdong province, even parts of Fujian, and of course moving into Hong Kong. But we're in the city of Shanwei, which is on the eastern, southeastern coast, I should say, of the province of Guangdong. And this was the city where this super typhoon was actually expected to make landfall sometime today. But again, this is a typhoon that has seen its trajectory change plenty of times. I got here yesterday in the afternoon, just a light drizzle, barely any winds. All of that changed today throughout the day. Downpours, non-stop winds picking up. I think you can see by the look on my face right now and by my hair, it's quite wet here. Just to give you guys a look on the water here on the ground, my cameraman is going to pound down here. I'm going to take a step in to this water. This is several inches, well above to my ankle there. Luckily, I do have my rain boots here. Now, a lot of the response here, the discussion is what are local authorities doing here in Guangdong province to respond to the effects and the brunt of this typhoon. Number one is postponing the beginning of the academic year. That was meant to begin today. That's been moved to later next week. Also, of course, transportation networks, those being affected. Train lines connecting the cities of Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, all being canceled. I don't know if you can see by the wind going through these trees. Quite strong gales here. We're not at the epicenter or the sort of main ring of this typhoon's impacts. We're on the outer edge as it continues to move westward, but we're still obviously having those effects being felt here in southern Guangdong. But back to what I was mentioning, transportation, that is a major concern. We're seeing videos being posted on social media, cars being hit by trees. Again, those are small occurrences. Authorities here have taken on these preventative measures, pinning down trees, either cutting them down, sort of trying to prevent any sort of debris landing on the streets. Of course, airports, the major airport in Shenzhen, Bao'an, canceling all inbound and outbound flights from lunchtime, local time here on Friday in Shenzhen. And of course, other airports, Jieyang and Huizhou, also having their airports, shut down. Fishing vessels, fishing boats, all being told to come back to their ports, to the harbors, to dock in. No business commercial activities in this region at all. Construction as well being halted. Here is an example of some of the preparation we've seen throughout the city here in southern Guangdong. Boarded up windows, boarded up entrances, sandbags on the ground, just to give you a look at some of that. 64,000 rescue and repair personnel have also been deployed across the province. They're there to mitigate any potential damages that could be brought in by the impacts of this typhoon. Now, last thing I want to mention is the question is, will this super typhoon even make landfall here in the Chinese mainland? We're looking at that trajectory. It's currently just south of Hong Kong, moving towards Macau, could possibly reach parts of Zhuhai and Xiangmen. But again, it keeps changing every few hours, and that's something we're going to be paying close attention to. Jamie.
Omar, thank you very much for that. Our correspondent Omar Khan in Guangzhou. Well, that's the story in Guangdong province. I think we're going to take you to Hong Kong now, and our correspondent Anne Cheng, who is in Hong Kong.
I'm currently in Wan Chai district, and there's heavy rain and strong winds, definitely much stronger than yesterday. There's a major highway behind me, but it's pretty much empty as most people are staying home. As of the afternoon, the government has reported at least 29 fallen trees and at least 3 injured people. Typhoon Saola is expected to be closest to Hong Kong this evening and tomorrow morning, passing within 50 kilometers south of the city. So the city is bracing for the typhoon to intensify even further with heavy squally showers and violent winds. The water level in low-lying coastal areas is expected to rise rapidly tonight, and there may be serious flooding.
People in Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine are voting in regional elections, which officials in Kyiv have described as illegal. Voters have been showing recently distributed Russian passports. The 4 regions, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, were claimed by Russia last year, but Moscow is not in full control of any of them. Along with the Crimean Peninsula, which was taken over by Moscow in 2014, this area makes up almost a fifth of Ukraine. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. Dasha, so these elections are going to take place over several days.
Well, that's right, and the residents of the so-called new territories of Russia are now able to cast their ballots in the exterritorial polling station. We understand that they have been set up in 81 Russian regions, about 329 exterritorial polling stations for the residents to be able to cast their ballots. We also have seen that the voting is underway in those regions themselves. In Kherson region, it will be taking place between the 2nd and the 7th of September. There are 36 mandates for the local authorities, for the local lawmakers. We have seen the 4 parties be competing there. Also on the 31st of August in the Zaporizhzhia and Donetsk People's Republic, they have started the early voting, and in the areas that are close to the front line, the polling stations will indeed be opened throughout this time because people find it hard to go there. So certainly the elections are underway. We understand that 4 to 5 parties are being represented, and the Russian authorities have addressed the criticism coming from Ukraine, saying that Ukraine simply does not care about those residents, and that's why they have joined the Russian Federation.
The Kremlin has confirmed President Putin will hold talks with his Turkish counterpart on Monday. What can we expect from those talks?
Well, that's right. The ground has been laid by the foreign ministers of the 2 countries. Sergei Lavrov, Russian foreign minister, and Hakan Fidan, Turkish foreign minister, have met in Moscow for the negotiations. We understand the core of those talks have concerned, indeed, the issues related to the Black Sea grain deal, with Russia saying that it has outlined what needs to be done for Russia to get back to this arrangement. And, of course, the Russian alternative, the working alternative, which proposes to export up to 1 million tons of grain from Russia to Turkey with the financial support of Qatar for further processing and then being sent to the countries in need. These are the issues that I expected to be addressed by the 2 leaders as they meet on Monday, the 4th of September, in the Russian Black Sea city of Sochi. So certainly this is, of course, at the top of the agenda. But again, there is a number of issues that are related to the bilateral agenda, the energy projects that the 2 countries are having, the issues of Syria, as well as international agenda. This is what we are expecting the sides to touch upon, but of course Ankara is pushing hard to get Russia back to the Black Sea grain deal.
Dasha, thank you for that. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. Drones are playing an increasingly important role in this Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine has used them to target Moscow and St. Petersburg, far beyond its borders. While on the front line, troops continue to experiment with different types of drone, covering a range of uses. At the request of the Ukrainian military, markings on the drones in our correspondent Yolo Abdavid's report have been blurred.
In Moscow, some people are beginning to realize how the conflict in Ukraine could affect them too. 30 kilometers behind the battle zone, these men are honing their drone skills.
Our equipment is very important. In our area of operation, we can hit civilian cars, as well as lightly armored and heavily armored tanks. Because of that, we are able to strike at any distance, from any angle and from any place we fly our drones from, as long as we're in radio range and have enough battery.
They use different varieties, and when loaded with explosives, they're used for one last task. An estimated 10,000 are lost or destroyed each month. Cheaper drones cost $2,000 each. Up to $20 million a month is spent on drones. Other small reconnaissance planes are more expensive. This surveillance plane from Denmark is bigger and has a 30-kilometer range.
We use them more to clarify something, for surveillance and to check intelligence. For instance, if an artillery unit is working on a specific target, we're able to stay in the air long enough to show them an image of the battle, and then they can correct their aim.
Most Ukrainian brigades now have drone units. Some of them are very new. Now, drones and small planes have been used in other wars, but currently they're being used in very different and inventive ways.
We have two types of four-blade drones to survey and drop ammunition where needed. They have a range of up to 10 kilometers and a payload of up to 10 kilograms of explosive.
Russian and Ukrainian forces use drones regularly, with deadly results. Patrolling on foot is harder for both sides, with drone operators watching every move on the ground. The technical nature of warfare is evolving, but with the same lethal results. Yolo Abdavid, CGTN, in southeast Ukraine.
A leader of the US far-right group, the Proud Boys, has been sentenced to 17 years in jail, one of the longest terms handed out over the Capitol Hill riots. Prosecutors said Army veteran Joe Biggs was an instigator in the storming of Congress in 2021, the failed bid by Donald Trump's supporters to block President Joe Biden's election victory. Another Proud Boys member, Zachary Rell, was given 15 years. The judge is set to sentence two more members later on Friday. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, John Terrett, watching events for us in New York. John, these are long sentences, aren't they?
Yes. Yes, they are, and I think it's one of the reasons why we're not seeing more protests outside these courthouses when Donald Trump appears in New York and in Florida and Washington, D.C. and in Atlanta, Georgia, because people are very scared that things will get out of hand like they did on January the 6th, and that they too will end up with these extraordinarily long sentences. Well, this is Joseph Biggs, the key person that we're talking about, a key leader of the far-right organization, the Proud Boys. It's a men-only organization with a tendency towards violence. It was, you will remember, in 2020, after a violent event in Virginia, President Trump asked the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. He later said he didn't fully understand what the Proud Boys were or what they stood for. But Joe Biggs, a key leader, boasted before January the 6th of 2021 of storming the Capitol. He's caught on tape as saying it will be a day in infamy. He was right about that. It certainly turned out to be that way. Joseph Biggs wept in court as a 17-year sentence was handed down against him yesterday. Another member yesterday received 15 years, bringing to 32 years in total for the two of them handed down by this judge in the same court, which speaks to what I was saying at the beginning of this report. Now, you're quite right. Others are to be sentenced today, but the Proud Boy leader, Enrique Tarrio, for various reasons, his sentencing has now been put off till next week. So this is going to continue for a while. Jamie?
And President Trump's Georgia legal case is going to be televised. Is that right?
Yes. Now let's just remind our viewers, we're talking now only about the Georgia case in the south of the country, which is where President Trump and 18 others are accused of trying to subvert the election in 2020, the presidential election. It does seem as if the judge in charge of that case is minded to allow it to appear on television and streaming. And this is possible because it is a state court. Were it to be a federal court, well, then cameras are not allowed in federal court. But at the state level, it's up to the discretion of the judge. Now, there's been movement on this story in the last 24 hours as well, because President Trump has waived his right to an arraignment. I did say this last week when we were discussing this on the program last week, that there was a possibility that he would not appear in court at 9:30 next Wednesday morning, that it would all be done virtual. And so it has turned out to be. He's waived his right to an arraignment. It's a little bit surprising because the arraignment is a key process of the American justice system. It's where the judge reads the charges against you, makes sure that you understand as the defendant exactly what is expected of you and what is going to happen. So I think he will have to appear to be arraigned at some point, but for now, as of next week, he won't be. Meanwhile, Mark Meadows, one of the 19 co-accused, is still waiting to hear whether his case will be moved to a federal court, and both of them, Trump and Meadows, have asked their cases to be distanced from two other members of the 19 who are going to have early trials starting this October. It does seem as if the District Attorney Fani Willis's ambition of having one trial with all 19 defendants in one courtroom is beginning to fade. Jamie?
John, thank you for that. Our correspondent John Terrett in New York. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, more upheaval in Niger. The United Nations is looking for answers after its agencies are barred from some areas.
This week on Razor, saving eyesight using robots and stem cells. And an implantable fuel cell that runs on the excess glucose in your blood.
It's just using your metabolism to produce electricity, and in the not-so-distant future we can produce the energy we need to power up all medical devices, implants, pacemakers.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Preparing for Typhoon Solar, flights cancelled and financial markets closed as the storm bears down on southern China. Our other headlines, people in Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine cast their votes in regional elections, which officials in Kyiv describe as illegal. And one of the leaders of the United States far-right group, the Proud Boys, gets a 17-year jail sentence for the storming of Capitol Hill. Coup leaders in Niger have barred United Nations agencies and non-governmental organizations from operating in some parts of the country. The UN confirmed it was seeking contact with the junta after it stopped foreign groups working in so-called military operation zones. Niger's Interior Ministry did not specify the regions, but said the measures were a result of the security situation. Well, let's talk now to Gary Amadou in Niamey, the capital of Niger. Gary, where in the country are these United Nations barring measures likely to be in place?
Yeah, they're likely to be in place, let's say, in the region of Tillabéri and in Difa also, and also maybe in Maradi. I mean, those regions are affected by terrorism and criminality. So United Nations and, let's say, international humanitarian offices, they are in these three regions.
And what is the security situation like there since the coup?
We are not convinced that really there is a kind of a security situation because, I mean, let's say humanitarian offices used to work in this area, despite the fact that we have terrorism and we have criminality. So we, in my opinion, it means that maybe the junta is afraid of a kind of plot between the United Nations, European Union, and the ECOWAS. In the case there will be, let's say, a strike on the presidential palace. I think that this is the first fear. I mean, the reason of security, in my opinion, is not the first reason for banning, humanitarian, let's say, works in these regions.
And away from governments and NGOs and all the rest of it, what is your sense of how ordinary people are dealing with what's happened and what continues to go on?
Yeah, people are very, I'm talking about people who are living, let's say, in the regions of Tillabéri, in the regions of Agadez, not Agadez, Difa, and also in the regions of Maradi, where we have criminality. In these two regions, we have terrorism and criminality. And the fact is that we should know that humanitarian, offices used to, bring support to those who are suffering from these, let's say, phenomenon. So they are afraid of the fact that maybe they won't have, let's say, support again if the decision of the junta come to be, let's say, set up, and if the humanitarian, organization cannot go on this region, it will be very, very dramatic for all of the people who are living in these areas.
Gary Amadou in Niger, thank you very much for talking to us. Investigators in South Africa are trying to find the cause of the fire that killed at least 74 people in a rundown apartment block in Johannesburg. One theory is the blaze was sparked by someone using a candle because of a lack of electricity. As many as 100,000 people are thought to live in abandoned buildings in the city because of a chronic housing shortage. Our correspondent Julie Shire reports.
Johannesburg attracts job seekers from all over the world. The city's housing crisis was thrust firmly into the spotlight when a 5-story hijacked apartment building went up in flames, killing dozens of people.
It is unfortunate that we have to keep responding to situations of this nature, where a building is leased for the purpose of rehabilitating society, because it was an NGO that dealt specifically with displaced women. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, the building ended up serving a different purpose.
Illegally grabbed buildings often turn into crime hotspots and leave residents living in squalor without proper maintenance or services. At least 200 people lived in this building, described as an informal settlement.
There are cartels who prey on poor, vulnerable people, because some of these buildings, if not most of them, are actually in the hands of those cartels who collect rental from our people.
It's understood that the fire escapes were sealed, leaving residents trapped.
When I broke the window, the head is intact, but the body is not intact. So I come back in the gate, the fire is full. After that, I don't have any plan. I just sit. Then something is come to me.
The smoke?
Yeah, the smoke is come to me. Yeah. After that, I just fall down. Then from there, I don't know anything until now.
Others arrived distraught in the hope of finding their loved ones.
A lot of buildings been burned, a lot of people been dead. Even now, there's a people lost their families. I don't know where my brother is. I haven't been inside. I'm still also looking for my brother.
The tragedy comes 6 weeks after a massive gas explosion that ripped through the city center, killing one person and injuring almost 50 others. City and provincial officials visiting the scene of the fire throughout the day have promised to get to the bottom of what happened. But more importantly, will have to deal with a mammoth housing crisis on their hands, exacerbated by informal settlements and dozens of hijacked buildings in Johannesburg. Julie Shara, CGTN, South Africa.
At least 57 guards and police officers are being held hostage at jails in Ecuador. There have also been 2 car bomb attacks in the capital, Quito, targeting prison authorities, with 6 people arrested and explosions reported in the city of Cuenca. President Guillermo Lasso says the violence is a reaction by inmates and criminal gangs to searches for weapons and ammunition inside prisons, as well as the recent transfer of some offenders. Polls have closed in Singapore's first contested presidential election since 2011. 3 candidates are in the running for a role which is primarily ceremonial with few powers. Leading the race is Tharman Shanmugaratnam, a former minister in the ruling People's Action Party. The results will be seen as a measure of public support for the PAP after it was engulfed in a string of political scandals. China and Benin have announced the establishment of a strategic partnership following talks in Beijing between President Xi Jinping and his counterpart, Patrice Talon. Xi said China supports Benin's independent path towards development. Talon said Benin is willing to deepen cooperation with China. And Beijing has stepped up measures to boost its economy, with banks paving the way for further cuts in lending rates. As part of the support measures, Chinese authorities reduced the amount of funds institutions need to hold in foreign exchange reserves. Analysts say the measures are aimed at preventing a further downturn in the struggling property sector. Exploring on foot is always a good way to get to know a city, and organised walks are becoming one of the most popular ways for tourists to explore China's Chengdu. Our correspondent Guo Tianqi has taken a tour with a twist.
This is a map of a city walk tour, one of the most attractive leisure activities for young city dwellers. Well, this time more tricks are added, such as a murder mystery game. Our adventure begins here, in the geographical center of Chengdu, although by no means the most developed part of the city. We start by finding our companions in this restaurant. According to the rules of the game, we're now members of a mysterious organization, and we need to use these fragments of memory to find a missing person.
Most of the residents in this district are elderly, and they create a living environment that's difficult to match in other, more modern parts of the city.
Following the map, we find a bookstore inside this community. A broken vinyl record and a few pictures hint that we need to fall into a time tunnel to finish the task. Reminding us of a building with a slide we've just passed. With a sense of purpose, we fall from day into night. But the map is actually a ticket. After solving the puzzles, you can collect prizes such as coffee and snacks in different stores, where you can also rest your feet.
谢谢。有一些隐秘性，真的需要你探索。
These shops are very private and special. It took us a long time to find the entrance. And all the stores allow dogs. We had a great time.
The stores have been chosen very carefully by the organizer of the project.
We want to let visitors understand the local culture, so we are cooperating with these very personalized shops on quiet but cultured streets. And they've all been very supportive of the idea.
A city walk usually lasts 4 to 5 hours, and these murder mystery plots transforms the whole city of Chengdu into our theater, adding drama and a dose of suspense to the mix. Guo Tianqi, CGTN, Chengdu, Sichuan Province.
The headlines again. Preparing for Typhoon Saola, flights cancelled and financial markets close as the storm bears down on southern China. Our other headlines: people in Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine cast their votes in regional elections, which officials in Kyiv describe as illegal. And one of the leaders of the United States far-right group, the Proud Boys, gets a 17-year jail sentence for the storming of Capitol Hill. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.